All right, this is my review of August 27th, 2025. Um, you can see here I had two losing trades, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but these were executed on mini contracts um, on two lots, no less, which means that these two trades blew my account, blew my the futures desk account after 6 months, which really sucks. I've had that account alive longer than any other account by far, including personal accounts that I've personally funded. This has been the longest and most consistent trading journey that I've had in my career. I was consistently unprofitable, but consistent nonetheless. I think there were so many instances where I broke the rules, more than I can count. But compared to previous attempts at trading, whether it be personally funded accounts or like prop funded accounts, this is by far my furthest stretch, and I'm proud of it. However, um, it hurts. It definitely hurts to have lost this account, especially after 6 months. I don't even know anyone in the prop futures space that's kept an account alive that long. At least not an eval. Um, a lot of guys in this space they open accounts and then they either blow them in a week or they gamble them to passing. Uh, some of the guys are pretty consistent traders and they will keep funded accounts alive for many months. But I personally don't know anyone who's kept an eval alive this long, which is an achievement I'm proud of. A lot of people might hate on that and think like, oh, why didn't you reset, or like it's a waste of money and stuff like that. But um, I am at the end of the day, I'm proud of myself for keeping this account alive that long. However, we're here to review this session, and this session I am not proud of. It was tilt trading. Um, I broke a lot of rules. I think there was a lot of self sabotage. Um, I talked about it with Fat Cat, and we think that there's a self sabotaging um, aspect to a lot of unsuccessful traders where the pressure and the tension of keeping an account alive just becomes too much and they want that release. And I think there's kind of an analogy in there about the state of, the modern man or the modern person where we're just so surrounded by stimulation and uh, any tension or challenge that confronts us in life, there's an easy path to get away from that, and to achieve that release of that tension. And I think it's plaguing the the modern person's attention span and our ability to confront challenges and our ability to persevere. And unfortunately, I've succumbed to that. I've fallen for that trap of just scrolling through reels or just watching brain rot on YouTube, and just sitting at my desk and playing video games and always looking at my phone. And I think there's a problem there. And I think if I'm having problems like that in my everyday life, it's eventually going to carry over to trading. I can't be a successful trader, a disciplined trader, while my everyday life lacks that discipline and that attention and that focus and that that discipline. Um, so in that regard, I think that blowing this account was the easy way out for me. There was too much tension. It was so much work emotionally to keep this account alive and to show up every day and to try and dig out of the hole. And I eventually chose the easy way out, and I think that's what I did today, and we'll see that in the review. So Before we get to those two trades, you're going to see here that I took a lot of paper trades, a lot of simulation trades. I'm not going to review every single one of these with tags and whatnot. This was just drilling. I was drilling the open, trying to practice divergences, and I did a pretty good job of it. I want to just briefly run through these trades so that I can internalize at the very least what I was doing right this session, and I think I was doing a really good job of trading these delta divergences and managing my risk and whatnot on these simulation trades. But what ended up happening is after I put in that big winning streak on the simulation account, I impulsively switched over to live because I wanted to continue that run and make money because I wasn't content. I wasn't content with not making money today and just drilling. I wanted to make money. I wanted to get P&L out of the market selfishly. And that's where I made my fatal mistake. So let's just briefly go through some of these sim trades. And I just want to kind of go over what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong. I like this trade right off the bat. We've got 3 divergences in a row, 3 sell side divergences, and each sell side divergence has been pushed. So what's going on here is that the sellers are absorbing orders. So the buy orders are outweighing the sell orders, but price is going down. So the buying is being held down by new sellers. But what's happening is those sellers are getting pushed repeatedly. They're getting short squeezed. So sellers are coming in and holding and trying to hold the market down, and they're getting squeezed. And it happens 3 times in a row. At the point of taking this trade, it had only happened twice, but I noticed a third one setting up, and I took a long trade, and it ended up being a pretty decent trade. So let's watch it here. I got a pretty instant 2 ticks. Could I have held it longer? Yes, I could have. It would have been quite a hold, but it did eventually end up getting squeezed. I'm going to have to implement something on the checklist to keep track of these divergences. The next sim trade is a 4-tick loss to the short side. I don't really know what the setup was here. Maybe I was seeing something that I got to draw later. I thought I saw a divergence, but it ended up not being a divergence. Just something I need to work out through drilling, which is exactly what I'm doing. So that one, I just didn't see what was going on. I thought I saw something that I didn't. That wasn't happening. The next one, the next sim trade is a 3-tick profit to the short side. I think what's happening here is I just think that with all these divergences to the sell side that we are eventually going to start selling off. I think I see a divergence setting up, and I draw it here in a second. Yeah, see, so I thought I saw a divergence, but it actually wasn't there. I suppose. Yeah, there's no divergence there, unfortunately. So just working out the kinks. You can see that I'm trying to work stuff out, and I'm just not fully there yet, which is fine. That's exactly what drills are for. The next trade is a 6-tick loss, so I run into a little bit of trouble here. To the long side, we set up another divergence, and I want to push into it, but I don't think we do. I think there's been a change in character here. Yeah, because that divergence is actually holding. I think one of the immediate problems here is that despite this divergence having edge, it's kind of a top tick. We kind of like V flush the high a day on a divergence, um, which just means like, hey, practice more caution. You know, if we just V flush, there's a good chance we could just fucking tank to low of day. So I just gotta be careful if having those V flushes against me. I take a 4 tick loss. Just a couple seconds later, I try to re-enter it. So we're at a total of 10 ticks loss. And then I try 3 it. I get in for a third try, and this ends up being a 7 tick win, which seems really good. But in the context of eating a 10 tick loss, it's not great. I could have held that longer because that divergence, that original divergence idea, does end up getting tested. Doesn't get pushed. We actually fail it and continue going lower, but we do at least test it. So I think there's an important distinction to be made between pushing a divergence and testing a divergence. This is trade number 7, the next one, and it's a 2-tick loss, again on sim. Yeah, just trying to trade that spoof reclaim there. There is also a divergence up there, though, I want to test, but it doesn't want to. I think we've pushed down on so much sell volume that it's struggling to push back up. The next one is a 2-tick profit to the long side. I do get a little bit of movement back towards that divergence, but if I had held it, it would have came back against me. 2 ticks was all it was worth. That's a risky 2 ticks too. Next one's a 3-tick profit to the short side. So I see a sell divergence or a buy divergence below us, and I have a feeling that like, hey, they're probably going to push this divergence, and they do. I think it's important not to hold to the absolute bottom of the divergence. They're not always going to just blow it, but it will give some momentum, I think. Give you at least just a little bit of momentum into that divergence. Again, we have a long trade with a sell side divergence above us. I want to see us push into it. I think my risk is just a little too tight, and we don't end up actually going up through it, at least not immediately. So I think there's some nuance there in that when we put in a sell side divergence, it's important that I don't just immediately get into it. There needs to be some sign of pushing, maybe another divergence forming or something like that. It's the same thing with spoofing. If I can't just trade a spoof candle on its own, it's the same way that I can't just trade a divergence on its own. There needs to be something else setting up. Next trade is a 4-tick loss to the long side. Again, I'm trying to get through that divergence, and it's not working. Comes back on me. And I think this is the try 3. I get in it again, and I get a pretty decent hold out of it. And it's almost the exact same setup as last time. It's just slowly curving up into that divergence. This time it does push it, so I could have held it all the way through. So those prior 2 losses are unnecessary. I do not need to be taking all those trades. At this point in the session, I think I'm up on sim. I'm doing pretty good. These divergences are working, and I'm getting really excited about it. I'm like, oh, holy fuck, there's edge here. What I do next, though, is the fatal mistake. I switch over to live because I want to replicate these results, and I execute on minis. As to why I jumped in on minis, I think I described that at the beginning of this review. It's just too much pressure of this account, and I knew that by getting into a mini trade, it would be blowing the account, and I think there's a part of me deep down that wanted that. I wanted to blow the account today, just because it's the pressure was too much for me. I think it's a problem that a lot of traders have, this kind of self-sabotage behavior where you show up every day and you grind and you grind and you grind, and you have nothing to show for it. You're still red. You're still an unprofitable trader. That pressure and that tension builds, and you just want to release it. And I think that gambling and like throwing a big trade on, and all or nothing sort of mentality is a release. You're getting a release out of it, and a lot of times that release ends up blowing the account, which is really sad. I think that's exactly what happened today. So with that in mind, I'm not going to review the technicals of these two trades too much. Um, I don't think it's the technicals that really matter. Uh, I think regardless of what was setting up or what the price action was doing, there's a way bigger issue going on here, which is emotions. So that's what my plan is to diagnose in this review. And I want to try and understand what my mindset was at the time and why I was doing these things, and try to put goals in place to avoid doing this sort of thing in the future, because I am a strong believer in raising your rock bottom. And essentially, what that means for those who might not understand it is it's essentially when um, things get so bad and you make a mistake that's so traumatizing, to put it truthfully, um, that the next time you do something that maybe isn't as bad or damaging, it still feels the same. And you want it to. You want your mistakes to be lesser and lesser progressively, and to be less impactful and less damaging. But you want that same feeling. You want that same gut wrenching feeling of, oh man, I really messed up here. I really made a mistake. And it's through that, again, quote unquote trauma, that people make the best changes in their life. You kind of need pain. Like if you've ever known anyone who suffered from addiction, or they had really irrational behavior, or they had anger issues, or if they struggled with mental health problems, or PTSD or anything like that, a lot of the times to make a big change away from a behavior like that, um, or to make changes or a problem that's plaguing your life, or something that's holding you back or affecting others, um, or like impacting your ability to succeed in life. The way that most people change those habits is through something bad happening. Something horrible happens, um, and they stop doing that thing right then and there, or at the very least, they start implementing changes right then and there. Um, I don't think anyone has ever met a former addict who slowly quit over time and just decided, oh, I'm gonna have one less drink this week. I'm gonna have, one less fucking shot of heroin or whatever it is. It's it usually happens instantly, and it's usually, unfortunately, because something bad happened. And I don't think trading is any different. I think the biggest beneficial changes that a trader can implement to their trading career usually happens after a really traumatizing trade or a really traumatizing session. And it's something that hurts, it's something that pisses them off, it's something that they're motivated to change, and they never want to do it again. And in that way, those mistakes are kind of a blessing, because that's when we really grow as traders. So that's what I'm going to try and extract out of this session, out of this review session. I want to grow as a trader. I want to diagnose what might have gone wrong during this session and during the week that uh, uh, came before it, and what I can do moving forward. So, first, I want to kind of jump into where my P&L has been over the last couple weeks. So, let's filter that out, and we'll do all of August. So you can see that my P&L before commissions was steadily climbing. The pretty much the whole month, which I am proud of. I'm not trying to overlook that. I think this P&L curve is impressive on its face. But let's take into account two things. So this is displaying ticks per contract. Let's change this to currency. And you can see I pretty much pissed away an entire month's worth of hard work in one session, essentially, in a couple trades. In fact, I think things started turning around. What's this? On August 21st. August 21st, I had a really bad day, and it started a domino effect, essentially, of just bad trades, super bad trades. But additionally, I can't really force commissions on here. Wonder if I can actually. One of the most recent contracts that I traded. U5. So MES U5. Let's go down to there. I think the commission is $1.60. Round trip. So let's see if that changed anything. And then I won't even bother doing it with the minis because there's only a couple trades on minis. So let's see what that does. If we go back to currency and then click force commissions, yeah, sheesh, does that ever make a big difference? It might not be $1.60, to be fair. I could probably look it up, but yeah, let's see if I can look it up. Just for shits and giggles. No, I'm not sure I can. Can look at trades from here. So, oh, this is minis. I need to, because my last two trades were placed in minis. Let's go back to Monday, maybe. MES fees. $1.60 entry, $1.60 exit, total of $3.20. So yes, it is technically $1.60 commissions. So what a difference that makes when you factor in commissions. So this is before commissions, this is after commissions. So you can see my whole month was essentially downtrending because of commissions. So I think there is it's easy for me to blame micros, but micros are absolutely an essential instrument as a futures trader, and there will be times and places where trading micros is absolutely necessary because for one, you need to be able to scale in and out of positions, and for two, when volatility gets super high, you can eat a lot more risk than you can on a mini. However, that being said, I think we're still in a very choppy environment where on the best days, the best trades you're gonna get are maybe only worth 3 or 4 ticks as a scalper. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great trade on a mini contract, but on a micro contract, 3 or 4 ticks, the commission drag on that is going to be pretty nuts. I think there's a reason for only trading one mini, and sizing up from there as a scalper as opposed to sizing down, especially in low VIX. I mean, if VIX is like 30 or 40, as it has been earlier in this year, even one micro might be too much size, because price can just blow out 5 points, 10 points, 20 points. In times like that, you need to be on micros to account for that increased risk. But in times of low volatility, it's like you only have enough edge as a scalper to capture those couple of ticks. And if you're on micros like I was for the month of August, commissions are just gonna eat you alive, and that's exactly what they did. The commissions just destroyed me. So, um, the lesson there, I think, is that I was kind of setting myself up for failure, and I hadn't really thought about that until just now doing this review. That basically I was damned if I did and damned if I didn't, because coming out of this drawdown um, was hard enough as it is using normal size. But to try and dig out of this drawdown on micros, first of all, it's gonna automatically, let's ignore commissions for a minute and just pretend that I'm, you know, let's even switch this back to before commissions. Let's pretend that I am just digging out of this hole. It's working, right? Yeah, I am doing a good job of it, and I'm being pretty consistent with this P&L curve. But if I back my dates up all the way to February, I mean, it's gonna take me a long time to dig out of this hole, and there's nothing wrong with that. I was prepared to spend another 6 months digging out of this hole, um, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's consistent. Getting these small base hits, digging out of this hole, and trying to reclaim that $3,000. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really hard to do that. Not only is it hard to make $3,000 with micros as a scalper, but it's hard to do that, especially in the context of everything that happened before. Like, psychologically speaking, being down here and slowly grinding your way up after all of this P&L volatility, getting all the way up just barely to the profit target, and then having to dig all the way out of it. It was a lot of pressure, and I'm not using that as an excuse for myself. I think that pressure is a good thing. I am really proud of the way I traded this account, and I'm glad that it sucked. What you're looking at right now, this white line on my chart, is the hardest 6 months of my life, and I'm proud of that. I'm really, really proud of that, because I kept it alive for so long, and I was disciplined, and I was, developing as a trader. I wasn't falling for any of the traps of like, oh, I just need to show up and do better tomorrow, or I need to be more disciplined. I was implementing changes, adapting, and overcoming hurdles and the sorts. I was doing a very good job, and I'm proud of that. It was hard. It was very, very hard. I'm glad it was hard, but at the end of the day, I think where the account was and how I was choosing to dig out of it, it was damned if you do, damned if you don't. I was up against a rock and a hard place. It's like, if I traded minis to try and dig out of that hole, it would have been too much risk, and one bad trade could have blown the account, which is actually what happened. Or if I had stuck to micros to dig out of the account, I could have just kept digging and digging and digging for another 6 months, but commissions would have eventually killed me. So there's two ways to look at that. I think, um, given that context, I really don't blame myself that much for blowing this account. It's more so the way I did it. Like, had I continued on this upward trajectory before commissions, Granted, it probably would have ended up blowing eventually because, again, commission drag. Um, but I would have rather had it blown that way than the way I did. That being said, though, days like these are just kind of a matter of time. Uh, Granted, days like these come and go, and every trader needs to adapt to them. And the way I blew on this day was outlier because I had way oversized, and it was almost like taking a fucking gun to your head. It was literally just account suicide. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I think there was a 1 in a million chance that I could have dug out of this account, honestly. That's not the point, and again, that's not an excuse. I should have kept trying. I should have, you know, put the effort in to try and bankroll this account out of the hole. But I'm also not going to sit here and beat myself up over it too bad, because it was a learning experience. This right here was an amazing learning experience, and I'm proud of it. I actually want to do a breathing exercise real quick, and I want to try and internalize that feeling that I'm having real quick. So what I tried to do there was internalize how I feel about this account and the fact that I am I am upset that it's gone, and it's almost like losing a friend. Honestly, it's like me and this friend have spent so much time together, and it's hard for me to accept that it's finally over. Um, but that's life. You move on. You make new friends. You meet new people. Old friends move on. You just keep moving forward. And me and this account have traded through thick and thin. And while it's uh, while it's certainly sad to see her go, I'm glad the memories are there. I'm glad the experiences there are there. I'm glad I got to hone and refine my skills trading this account, and basically it's on to the next one. You know, it's like I just can't sit here and you know beat myself up too much about it. It's what's done is done, and at the end of the day, we have to keep moving forward. And maybe my next account, I will be able to internalize a lot of the lessons I learned from this one, and you know, I hope that my next account is even better than this one, and the P&L curve is prettier, and I learn more, and I keep progressing as a trader, and even if my next account fails, I hope that I can keep it alive as long as this one. I can land more base hits, less P&L volatility, less emotional volatility, and I hope I can, you know, make it work and continue being a good trader. So while it's sad to see this account go, I'm so happy that I traded it, and I'm so proud of myself for trading it the way I did. I want to finish this review by looking at those last two trades. These are the trades that I placed on live with size with 2 minis. It was kind of the coup de grace of this account. I want to, before I do that though, I just want to talk about emotions. Specifically, if I scroll down here, we can talk about the big three here. Calm, content, and patient. There's a pretty good, probably, what is that, 60, probably just under 60% of my trades on this account were made in good emotional state. But that 40 or so percent it's leaving room to be desired. I want to clean that up. I think that in the beginning with this account, there was a lot of optimism. There was a lot of really, really good days, a lot of winning streaks. I can go pull up old videos of weeks where I was doing really good, weeks where I was doing bad, you know, and there's everything in between. The emotional roller coaster that was this account was something that I've never really experienced before, and I think the number one emotion that held me back, and in my opinion holds all traders back, is contentment. I think when I hit this account all-time high and I was so close to passing, there was a serious contentment issue where I was not content with failing. I did not want to fail, and I was so close to passing this account and moving on and making money potentially. And the idea of losing that and the idea of failure was just so foreign to me, and I just hated the thought of failing. But it's the same lesson when you're driving a car, where if it's like if people always see those videos of the person who gets pulled over on the side of a highway by a cop, and then the cop car gets hit by another driver, and it's like, how does that happen? How do you hit a cop car? It's got those bright flashing lights. Well, that's how they're getting hit, is because the drivers are seeing those bright flashy lights and they're staring at them, and they're thinking, oh, why, how did that person get pulled over? I want to see them. I want to see this person that got pulled over. Is there drama there? Like, it's the same thing when you drive by a car crash. When you're looking at something while you're driving, you're much more likely to steer the vehicle in that direction. When you're learning to drive, especially professional drivers, when they're learning to drive, their motto is you want to look where you want the car to go. So if you're taking a turn, you need to look into the turn. Obviously, you also paying attention to traffic and whatnot, other drivers. But you want to look where you want the car to go, and the car will naturally steer that direction. It also works negatively, where if you are driving on a highway and you see a cop pulled over on the side of the road and you're staring at their car, your mind subconsciously is more likely to steer the car in that direction, and that's why cop cars get hit on the side of the highway so much. Your brain is going to steer in the way that you are looking. In trading, I think when you are so afraid of failure, and this applies to everyday life too, when you are so afraid of failure and failing is just the worst imaginable thing, and you would rather do anything than fail, and you're gonna try so hard to not fail, and everything in your body is working towards not failing. You do not want to fail. Guess what you're doing? You're looking in that direction. You're looking in the direction of failure. Failure is more likely to happen, especially when you're not content with failure. When your thought process is, I really cannot afford to fail. I cannot fail. I do not want to fail. Failure would hurt so bad, and all the people I would let down, and how disappointed people would be in me, and how disappointed I would be in myself. Failure would just be the worst thing that could possibly happen right now. You're not content with failure at that point. And I think a lot of the most successful traders in the world, the one thing I've noticed that they all have in common is that they are content with failure. They embrace that failure. And it's easy to write a Twitter post about being content with failure, or, you know, being in a YouTube video and like telling all the people watching your YouTube video that, oh, you just need to embrace failure and do better and all this wishy-washy stuff. But it's another thing to practice it. It's another thing to love failure, and whenever you have a bad day, to enjoy the review process and to look forward to it and to think, oh man, this is going to be a good review. This review is really going to help me. I think that mindset, that thought process is so important to trading. And when my account hit its climax way back in March or April or whatever, I think I was so afraid of failure, and I didn't know what failure tasted like. And every time I had a bad day, I was just filled with dread. And maybe I would stick around and do review on some bad days. Like I would sit down and force myself to do that review, but I think it hardly ever meant anything. I think I was just kind of going through the motions and trying to make it look like I was a good trader. And I do review every day, and like I review my bad trades, but am I really getting anything out of it? Am I really internalizing that information and focusing on it and meditating on it? And I think when those bad days were happening way back then, it was just a perfect storm of, one, I'm not embracing failure. Two, I'm actually obsessing about failure. I'm so scared of failing. It's like standing in on the balancing wire and you're so afraid of falling. And three, I just had all this volatility going on. I won't get into the specifics of the market environment at that time. All I will say is that it was very volatile. We had an outlier market. The VIX went up to like 50 or 60 or whatever the fuck. That only happens a handful of times each decade, but I could sit here and say, oh man, that's why I blew my account, is because VIX hit 50. But no, VIX is going to hit 50 again. It's a fact. VIX will hit 50 again. I will be trading in VIX 50 again. And for me to sit here and say, oh, well, the only reason I blew my account was because VIX was at 50. Well, what's going to happen next time VIX is at 50? I'm going to blow my account again. And worse yet, I might be trading personal capital when that happens. I might have $1 million account next time VIX hits 50. And because I can't handle it, and because it blew my account last time, I'm going to blow $1 million instead of, a $50 Combine account. That's not an excuse. I can't just say, well, I would have passed the account if Fix didn't hit 50. Well, the other way to think about that is if I did pass this account and I did become funded, what are the chances that with that increased pressure, now I am funded, now I am splitting profit with Fat Cat, now this is real money. If the pressure of this evaluation account was enough to make me crumble, what would the pressure of a live funded account do to me? I think it's a blessing that I never passed this account, because if I did, there would have been real money on the line. I would have probably floundered a lot harder. It would have been VIX 50 when I got funded. I think that account suicide would have happened within weeks, if not days, of me passing the account. Instead of spending the last 4 or 5 months grinding, reviewing, learning, trying new things, developing new sources of edge, uh, meditating, doing hypnosis, doing breath work, becoming more comfortable with myself. I love who I am so much more than I did back in February because of hypnosis, because me and Fat Cat have overcome so many of the things that were holding me back, that I think failing this account and trading it the way I did for the last 6 months, unprofitably and unsuccessfully, made me such a better trader. I think, if they're, let me get my screenshot software up. Full screen this. I think if I were to measure my experience as a trader, it would look something like this. The little bumps of knowledge, little pullbacks because I make mistakes, little boosts of confidence, little drawbacks in confidence. There might be days where I have really good confidence, days where I have really bad confidence, um, days where I'm disciplined, days where I'm undisciplined, um, and days where I fail to review, days where I do review, days where I do meditate, days where I don't meditate. And I think my knowledge and my development as a trader was not great in those first couple months, even though my P&L was awesome and I almost passed the account, and I was, racking up really good winning days, and I was keeping my losing days small. And I think I went on something like a 20-day winning streak, like 20 session winning streak. I was landing profitable trades, but I don't think I was a good trader. That's the honest to God truth. I was not a good trader when I was hitting those trades. When my P&L started pulling back, I was presented with a lot more challenges. And I think when you're presented with more challenges, your experience goes up, and you're pushed and you're challenged and your experience goes up. And then maybe you have a good winning streak, and then it comes back a little bit, but then it goes back up. And then you're doing really, your P&L is going down, but you're showing up, you're doing a review. What can I do better? Why am I in this drawdown? What can I do better to not be in this drawdown anymore? And, you show up, you do your review, the next day you don't, but then you meditate, you get a really good meditation in. There were days where me and Fat Cat would spend hours meditating and trying to diagnose what's going on. And, he would use these different meditation techniques on me, and we would overcome these problems that were holding me back for well before I even started trading. These were problems that were holding me back as a kid, and then you let it drop off, and then you stop meditating, and then you realize, oh, I'm making these same mistakes, I need to fix them. And then you start meditating again, and then you start reviewing again, and then you implement a new tag that helps you diagnose your trading. and then you use a new piece of software in your trading and it helps you. um, the implementation of a lot of the tradecraft tools that would help me overcome a lot of these problems. um, Learning and all these challenges, and then one day you think I fixed it, I'm a good trader again, you have a really good winning streak, and then there's this huge challenge, and these challenges just they push you mentally, and you're just like, on one hand you're so desperate and you're so upset, but it's testing you. The market is testing you. You're testing yourself. Your own psyche is testing you. And then you think you have it under control, and then boom, you're tested again. Another huge test comes in, and you're like, oh my God, it can't get worse than this. And you have to struggle, and you keep grinding, and you keep grinding, and you keep grinding. And every day is just, it seems like it's getting harder, but you're getting better. You're learning all these nuances of yourself and of trading, and you're exploring new sources of edge, and you're doing things that you never thought were possible. And then guess what? Your everyday life, your relationships, your work, the relationships you have with your wife, the relationships you have with your family, your coworkers, they start to improve because those people can see that you're pushing yourself. And that's not to say that every conversation you have is like, oh, I'm trying to become a professional trader or whatever. But it doesn't it doesn't take a fucking psychoanalyst to realize when somebody is really motivated and they're really pushing themselves. Especially the people closest to you. Like if you really take what you do seriously and you try and you're motivated and you put so much effort into it, your people around you are going to see that. They're going to feel it. You're going to radiate that energy. I'm busy. I have shit to do. I need to do this. I need to get it done before I can relax. Sorry, I can't go out drinking tonight. I got too much work I have to do. It compounds. It all fucking compounds. And then you have a weekend where you didn't review, but then you come back on Monday and you review some more, and then you have a bad day, a couple bad days, but guess what? Those bad days, what are they? Those bad days are challenges, and they excel us. And when we're challenged, we do better, and we keep going up. We just keep advancing, and especially in those tough, fucking brutal, grindy sessions where nothing's moving and it's so hard, we just keep going up. We keep making advancements, and it's not easy. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't get easier. In fact, it gets tougher, I would argue. We're still advancing, and each time we're challenged, we get better. We advance. We make better trades. We review. We know not to make that mistake again because we've made it before. We've gotten burned so many times in the past. I think it's just there's a difference between being a bad trader and being a good trader who's losing money. So as the P&L of this account went down and I floundered and I was presented with challenges, my knowledge and my experience skyrocketed. And after being presented with all those challenges, my knowledge and experience as a trader just propelled to astronomical levels, and I was learning so much more by these challenges than I was when everything was good, when I was just, making good trades. And that's not to say that when I was making good trades, I wasn't advancing, but the rate at which I was advancing was so much slower than it was when I was making mistakes and when I was really pushed to the limit, you know? So there's a lesson here, and the lesson is that when when trading is easy and when life is easy, you're not advancing at nearly the rate you are when you're pushed and when you're challenged and when things are bad. But the difference is you need to learn and you need to put in the effort of learning from those mistakes, because if those bad days come and go and you're not doing anything about it, you're gonna hemorrhage. Your experience isn't gonna go anywhere. It's just gonna, it's just gonna flounder compared to, if you put the work in and you try, um, you're gonna be better for it. But it's not fucking easy. It's gonna require work, but that work pays off, and eventually, maybe in a couple months or something, we'll see that my P&L curve might start lining up with my knowledge and experience, and my P&L might become parabolic, and I might end up being a good trader. But it's not easy. It's going to require a lot of work, a lot. So the point I'm trying to get across is that at the time of trading this account, I think there was just a lot going on internally. Um, I think I was, struggling with uh, a lot of things. I was struggling with failure, contentment, primarily. I did not want to fail. I was, in fact, I was obsessed with not failing, and I think that's what drove me in this direction. But I'm also glad I failed. I'm so glad I did, because if I had succeeded and this P&L curve kept going up, eventually I would have been challenged, because it's always going to come. Those challenges are never going to stop coming. And if the good run had gone on long enough, I would have lost actual money. I would have lost actual serious money, and that kind of a mistake, had I made it and lost that much actual money, it could have been devastating. It could have been such a psychological blow to me that I could have never recovered. It could have just been too much for me, and I could have just spiraled and maybe even never returned to trading. That could have been too much damage. But the fact that I made this many mistakes in such a short time frame, and I learned from those mistakes, is invaluable. It's worth so much more than what I paid for this account. You know, if we're talking tuition here, then the tuition I paid for this account is virtually nothing. And I'm so happy that I am coming away from this account with so many lessons that are gonna carry forward. They have to carry forward. It's impossible that they don't. I think that's something that we're gonna see in the coming months, is that the lessons I'm pulling away from this account are going to compound, and eventually, um, I think they're going to compound in my favor, and they're going to present themselves in the form of consistency and discipline. But um, for the sake of finishing this review, let's go watch the last two trades. Um, Again, for context, I had been trading on Sim the entire session, And then at the very end, I made the impulsive decision to switch over to live because I thought I'm doing so well on sim. Let's make some money because I'm not content with where my account is. And these were the results of that. Again, I'm not going to read too much into these trades, but rather I want to read into the psychological implications of these trades. And one of those implications that I just noticed is that I had a perfect opportunity to get out of this trade for a break even because um, losing trades often present themselves as losing trades right away. Like, how many times have you been in a losing trade that suddenly went in your favor? Not very much. It might happen once in a blue moon, but don't focus on those exceptions. Focus on the 99% of the other time when you're sitting in a losing trade and it keeps losing and it keeps losing and it keeps getting closer to your stop until it finally hits your stop. Usually, when you're in a bad trade, it's bad right away. And this trade was bad right away. It went against me about 2 or 3 ticks, and then it comes back to my entry, and I have a perfect opportunity to get out for a break even or even a tick. The reason I'm pointing this out isn't because of the execution implication, but more so because of the psychological implication. That is, I am not content with taking this trade off or a break even because I want this trade to work. I want to make I want to make $1,000. I want to fix the hole I'm in. I want to pass the account. I want to make money. I want to be a full-time trader. I want to buy a fucking Bugatti and a yacht and a Rolex. There's a lack of contentment with the fact that this trade is not working. And if this trade is not working, how do I mitigate my losses? But I'm not even thinking about that right now. And the reason I'm not is because I'm discontent at this very moment in the trade. I'm not content with where my P&L is. I'm not content with cutting the trade. I'm just so focused on profit, on P&L, that I'm not thinking about the process. And the process is telling me cut the trade for break even or even a 1 tick loss, and I'm not doing that. I've got a lot of price action reclaim above me too, which is dangerous. It gives me another opportunity to get out for a break even. So it's tested my entry twice so far. 2 opportunities to get out for break even. How many times have you seen something test your entry twice and it work for you? It never does. It never does. That's the first live trade. Let's go to the second live trade. It pulls back a little bit, same area. And it instantly goes against me. Instant loser. These trades so often are just instant losers, and you have to cut them instantly when you're scalping. I even think this applies to um, other forms of trading on higher time frames. It's like if you get in a trade and the trade is going against you for however long, whatever time frame you're trading on, let's say 5-10 minutes, it's just hovering below your entry. How often does that trade end up working? It doesn't. It's gonna take your stop out, and a lot of times it'll take your stop and then it'll go, and you think, oh, how did the market makers know that was my position? And it's they, no, the market isn't working against you in your fucking 5 lots. There's psychology here, and part of trading is mastering that psychology and overcoming it. And I think if a trade is going against you, statistically speaking, you're probably in at the wrong location and you need to get out. It's a losing trade. Maybe it is a winning trade and you're cutting it too soon, but that can be addressed later. What's important is keeping your losses small. and not letting it come back on you too much. And that's exactly what I did here because I wasn't content. I wasn't content with those losses. I'm going to tag these just for the sake of tagging. Let's see. Try to aggressive scalp. I was greedy. I was impulsive. I was revenge trading. And then let's get those emotional tags in there too. Tilt, discontent, impatient. Yeah, I think that's good. So 2 red star trades. I was just not in the right headspace for these. So I think that's about it. I know that reviewing these 2 trades was such a small part of this review, but I think this is just kind of a larger issue that I'm trying to diagnose, and I think the crux and the biggest issue in the way of me succeeding is contentment, plain and simple. There are things that I want to do moving forward that I'm going to address in my monthly review, um, but I'll touch on them quickly here. Um, one thing I need to do is I need to practice more discipline in my everyday life. It's easy for me to sit here and talk about discipline, but it's another thing to actually enact it. And I think there are a lot of things in my life right now that I could be doing a whole lot of it better. Um, just to name a few, like diet, exercise, keeping a clean house, um, showing up to work on time. I've been late to work a lot in the past. Um, I could be a better me, essentially, is what I'm saying. Um, by practicing that discipline in my everyday life, I think it will carry over to trading. It has to, because you've never met a successful trader who was a slob, or didn't have a drive, or didn't do his review, or just like half-assed his way through it. They see phases of success, but they're not a successful trader. The same thing that every successful trader has in common is that they're disciplined and they have drive, uh, outside of trading too, not just in trading. Um, in order to achieve that discipline, I think I need to do a better job of hypnosis, self hypnosis every day. Uh, and that's the plain and simple of it. Is the only way that these changes are going to take effect is if, one, I can um, rewire my brain through hypnosis, and two, if those habits are steadily consistent over time. And I think one relies on the other. I think if I was trying to do this without hypnosis, it would be extremely difficult, especially given my history. I am not a consistent person. I am not a disciplined person. I think it's going to require that rewiring of my brain chemistry in order to become consistent and disciplined. Um, I think it's like the chicken or the egg. Hypnosis and habit repetition are both going to rely on each other. in the coming months. Um, a part of that habit building process is review. Um, on one hand, I am very proud of the fact that I've been consistent with my reviewing over especially the last month, but the last 6 months in total. Uh, I could be doing a lot better, especially because I have a tendency to let my reviews build up and I procrastinate them and I wait to do them until the last possible moment. I did set a goal for myself at the beginning of August to never let more than 2 reviews pile up at a time. And I did that. I accomplished that. And I'm very proud of accomplishing that. However, I shouldn't have any review piling up. The review should be done while the information is still fresh in my mind. I think there was a lot of sessions I traded this month where my review was essentially wasted because I was completing the review sometimes days after the session had been traded. This is not an exception. I traded this session on August 27th, and I am recording it and reviewing it on September 2nd. There's a big gap there. I think sometimes there will always be gaps, but 90% of the time, I should be doing the review the same day. I, for the longest time, used work as an excuse. I'm like, oh, I got to go to work. But even on a day like today, I am absolutely crunched for time. I still have enough time to get my review done before work. There's not really an excuse there. So that's something I hope to address moving forward. And hopefully, with those reviews being fresh in my mind and using hypnosis and using Wim Hof breaths, I will fall in love with reviewing. And it's easy for me to sit here right now and say, oh, I love reviewing. But that's clearly not the case if I'm procrastinating it and waiting until the last possible minute. I should want to do the review. I should want to dive into it as soon as I possibly can. And that's not to say I should force it on myself and, lie to myself and say that I like it, but I will grow to like it. I've developed a lot of habits in the last couple years that at first were chores and I procrastinated that have since become the things that I love. Like weightlifting is just I can't imagine myself not lifting weights. It just feels so good. I love it when it hurts. And I want review to be the same thing. I want review to hurt and to stretch my mind and my head to get a headache and think, oh man, this is so hard. But at the end of the review to think, holy fuck, I'm so glad I did that. Just like a good workout. You get a good pump in and you get your blood flowing and your muscles hurt and you're in pain and you're like, oh, I don't want to move. But you just feel so good after. That's my goal with reviewing. If there was one thing that I want to focus on for the next 3 months, it would be that. I want to fall in love with review. I want to get as many reps in as I possibly can in the next few months. As far as review goes, I want it to be an obsession. I want to be a review fucking monster because all the best traders that I know, they review like fucking monsters. And I think if I can get consistent good reviews in every single session, there's no way that's not going to translate to P&L. It's impossible. And even if it doesn't, at least I'm doing something productive. Yeah, and people all usually say that trading is a zero-sum game, which is partially true, but in the context of the individual, this is not a zero-sum game. You are advancing yourself more than probably anything else. I think there are competitive sports that a person can get into that will advance their personality and their drive. And I think in that way, trading is no different. You're pushing yourself to the very limits of what your mind is capable of, your emotions are capable of, and you're coming out a better person. It's hard for me to imagine a successful trader who isn't a better person than when they started. So many successful traders are just incredible people, and they do such incredible work for charities and what have you, and they are genuinely good people. And I think by setting out on this journey, that's kind of the end game. You're gonna become a better person, and I think that's kind of what I'm in it for. So I hope that by falling in love with this review process and doing it every single day and being consistent about it, and just attacking it, that I'm gonna become a force to be reckoned with, um, in the trading space. Um, so that's the goal I'm setting for myself for the next 3 months, and I hope to keep updating on that goal daily over the next weeks and months.